Ines, let's talk about what exactly French investigators were looking for.
Yeah, Chris. So the Paris prosecutor's office confirming in a statement that they did raid the Paris offices of X earlier today. We understand that it was their cybercrime unit that carried out the search, but Europol, the European Union's police agency, was also involved. Now, this was all part of an investigation that was first opened back in January of last year over concerns that X's algorithms are biased. The probe was later expanded over the summer, and the Paris prosecutor's office saying in a statement the investigations concerned breaches of French law resulting from the provision of a tool, Grok, enabling the generation and or dissemination of child sexual abuse material, sexually explicit deepfakes, or anti-Semitic content. Now, prosecutors have asked both Elon Musk and former CEO Linda Yaccarini to attend voluntary interviews in the spring. We know that ex-employees have also been asked to appear as witnesses. And worth pointing out that back in December, the EU fined X $140 million for failing to comply with transparency laws, transparency obligations. So one of their concerns, for example, was the blue check marks. The EU ruled that those verified accounts were misleading because they suggested that there had been an identity verification on those accounts that, in fact, had not been carried out. So we've seen the EU, I think, across the board trying to regulate big tech here. France certainly leading the way in that department. It's become quite a big point of contention between the U.S. and the EU. The U.S. pushing for the EU to ease up on some of those restrictions by threatening tariffs. We saw France in the aftermath of everything that went on with Greenland announcing that the French government would no longer be using Zoom, for example. They're going to be now moving to using a French platform known as Visio, which is essentially the French equivalent of Zoom. But the French and I think the European Union more broadly have been talking about this idea of digital sovereignty. They don't want to rely on the U.S. when it comes to big tech.
Okay, so breaking news as far as social media and tech giants go. The Paris offices of X were raided by the French police and Europol, as they were saying, and basically, I can't say I didn't see this coming, especially with Grok being in the news and X being in the news for allowing deep fakes and a lot of explicit images of children to be displayed and shared on their platform. And they also brought into question the blue check marks, which are supposed to represent verified accounts, basically saying that they found accounts that had those blue check marks but didn't necessarily go through the verification process as far as like having actual ID or some type of identification to verify to receive those blue checks. Of course, you know that you would pay for those blue checks monthly. So a lot of times, man, these companies are trying to use that as a way to earn money. Yeah, we'll see. If Elon Musk and you know, the other individual they were saying that's like one of the heads of X, if they will go to the voluntary interviews that they are scheduling for April, from what I remember them saying. um I'm thinking it's going to be in Paris, but yeah, like I said, I can't say that I didn't see this coming. X has come under a lot of scrutiny with their AI tool called Grok, and certain things, man, you're just not able to get away with as far as like let like certain type of photographs and stuff like that just get spread all over the internet, and even to be created. So I feel like AI companies who have tools that generate images from prompts, or taking images and generating new images, they definitely want to take a look at putting in like concrete safeguards to make sure that this type of thing isn't happening. Because you know even though this is over in Paris, I feel like, even though the U.S. is trying to vouch for these tech companies and say, well, if y'all don't use these tech companies, or if y'all don't deal with these tech companies, then we're going to put tariffs on you. I feel like the U.S. also has to take a stance with this as well, to prevent this from happening. I just did a video on a guy. He said he was from Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, he committed the crime of creating deepfakes of a teenager. He's 20 years old in Wisconsin. You know, he didn't. I'm not sure if I don't think he used Grok, but the AI platform that he used didn't have enough safeguards to prevent him from creating those images. So, you know, if you can create the AI can do a whole lot of stuff now. You can definitely create the safeguards to prevent those type of things from happening. But I'm gonna go ahead and play another clip here from this whole thing.
French prosecutors searched the offices of Elon Musk's social media platform X on Tuesday as part of a criminal investigation. Authorities are looking into alleged complicity in spreading child sexual abuse images, sexually explicit deepfakes, and Holocaust denial. Scripps News international correspondent Ross Cullen joins us now from Paris with more on this. And Ross, do we know what authorities were looking for in their raid and what they might have found?
Well, Holly, that raid taking place a little bit earlier on today here in the French capital. The French authorities looking into cybercrime assisted by the European Union's police agency, Europol. Now, it's all tied to an investigation that actually began in January last year over whether X's algorithm had been used to interfere in French politics.
I really think that's, you know, even though, you know, they're definitely going to take the whole, you know, child pictures and stuff like that, you know, very, very seriously. I think a lot of it definitely has to do with, of course, they were saying denial of the Holocaust, and also whether or not, you know, X had any influence on, you know, their political elections. I do feel like, you know, that definitely has, you know, a lot to do with it.
The investigation has since then been widened to look at X's artificial intelligence chatbot, Grok. We do know that the French prosecutors have announced that they have summoned Elon Musk here to Paris in April for a voluntary interview as part of this investigation, because there are also parts of the inquiry that are looking at allegations that there was the promotion of Holocaust denial content. Also, there were allegations related to data extraction and also complicity in the possession of child pornography. We know that in the past, X has characterized this specific French investigation as an attack on free speech, and we are waiting to hear, Holly, if Elon Musk will agree to coming here to Paris for that interview with Paris prosecutors.
And so, Ross, then what happens next if he decides to come, or even if he says, no, I'm not going to Paris, I'm not going to France?
Well, it's an official summons, but it would only be for a voluntary interview. So if he decides not to come here to Paris, there might be formal written evidence that the Paris prosecutors might accept, perhaps if he were to give a voluntary statement rather than appearing here in person. Certainly, we know that there are lots of issues related to X in a number of European countries. There is increasing pressure on Elon Musk's social platform in the United Kingdom, and we do see the wider impact of problems with X in the suggestions by different countries, including France and Spain, that there should be a social media ban on the use of these platforms for anyone under the age of 16 or 15. X is one of those social media platforms that would be targeted by such a ban.
And Ross, I know that some authorities have said they're no longer using X. They're going to communicate through other means like Facebook and LinkedIn. But could there be a ban of X in France and then perhaps even in other European countries?
Well, that would force a lot of European officials, including the French President Emmanuel Macron, the NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte. It would force these officials who continue to use X to find other means of disseminating their information, such as formal announcements, or perhaps using rival platforms such as Blue Sky or maybe LinkedIn. There has certainly been a call by several European members of Parliament for their leaders at national level to stop using X because of they feel that there has been a degradation of the content on there since Twitter became X since Elon Musk took control of the social media platform. Certainly there are some people who would like to see X banned, but here in France, one of the words in the national slogan is liberté, liberty and freedom, and so there is always a part of the French society, whether it's politicians or the public, who want to hold those truths of freedom dear and be able to have these social media platforms available to everyone and say it is up to the person themselves to choose whether to use it.
One of the things about free speech is it's just never free. And creating of, child abuse type of images and stuff like that, that really has nothing to do with free speech. That's just something that shouldn't be acceptable, and they shouldn't be able to create those type of images. Now, getting on there and posting, you know, tweets and threads and stuff like that, as far as speaking on what you want to speak on, and speaking your mind on certain things, or having a position on certain things, is like, I kind of separate those things. And it's going to be some people who are really disturbed as far as certain information that's being put out there. And you know that's really the fight that X is going to have, as well as any other social media that's um going to try to bat free speech, like Facebook. Of course they're going to have like millions and millions of people who are users of Facebook, but I think Twitter is like right up there, like a close second, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not sure if LinkedIn has nearly as many users as Twitter would have, or X. But they're basically saying that they're having their authorities and other members within like government and stuff like that. They're trying to get them to use another platform other than X to put out their messages and stuff like that. So very, very interesting in my opinion, because of course we know there's a big trial looming here for other social media giants. And as far as like over here in the United States, to where a teen is accusing them of creating all type of mental issues for her, and basically saying that the way that their platforms are set up, it caused her to have an addiction to it. From my understanding, she's a grown woman at this point, but she's suing from when the time frame of when she was a teen and using these platforms. So a ban on these platforms for kids, up until a certain age, I think it's going to help out a whole lot. And you don't want to have a bunch of kids who are walking around with like more stress and more mental issues than they already have to deal with, as far as like balancing school and growing, and now social media and the pressures of all that, that big wide net of social media that's out there. So we'll see what becomes of this. We'll see if Elon Musk even shows up in April to the voluntary interview, and maybe these platforms get banned overseas. We'll see. I'm gonna go ahead and close out. If you like my content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. This is Justin Paul. Peace.